Yo, what's up? Buff Missionary. Good morning. Snow is still coming down, but we out here anyway, continuing through this book, Steps to Christ. And man, I swear it just keeps getting better and better. We're gonna jump right into this. My phone is almost dead, so we're gonna try to get through what we can before this thing dies. But it says here, none but the Son of God could accomplish our redemption, for only he who is in the bosom of the Father could declare him. Only he who knew the height and depth of the love of God could make it manifest. Now, there's a mystery there, right? It's we walk by faith, not by sight. It's hard for us to understand the existence of God, the preeminence of God, the relationship that they have. We have a lot of great clues in the Bible that help us get closer to deciphering this in a tangible and practical, applicable way for us now. But it's hard to understand. But in principle, what we can get from what's been said here and from this relationship is that you can't share something that you don't have. Christ, being one with the Father, had access to something. He had something. He had the best view of something that he was able to share then with humanity who didn't have that same connection. He wanted to give humanity the opportunity to share in that connection through his work, through his mission. And then it goes on to say, nothing less than the infinite sacrifice made by Christ in behalf of fallen man could express the Father's love to lost humanity. Now, if we're talking about sacrifice, honestly here, what you're really talking about is love. I don't believe you can understand sacrifice if you don't understand love. And what makes this interesting, coupled with before that idea that you can't share what you don't have, it really exposes a lot of us Christians, I'm including myself in this as well. We get exposed for being walking contradictions because we want to put out there all this gospel truth. We want to put out there the life-changing benefits that being a part of God's family can do for you, and yet we're not reflecting that or resembling that in our own experience. We end up being these walking contradictions because we're professing something so much that it's very evident we do not possess. And then when it comes to, again, that perspective of viewing everyone the way that Christ did, it becomes impossible for us to love people who don't look like me and who don't act like me and who don't talk like me because I don't really have it inside. I'm professing it, but I don't possess it. And so those words come across as hollow. And I can't blame people who hear me professing and expressing things like this and then have no interest. I can't get mad at them for that if I'm aware of that. There has to be a real connection, a real appreciation for this relationship, understanding that it is more based in relationship and love than requirement and task. That's what Christ was about. It says nothing less than the infinite sacrifice made by Christ in behalf of fallen man could express the Father's love to lost humanity. How far are we willing to go? Not to suffer or to put ourselves through all of this unnecessary. How far are we willing to go to show someone else that God loves them? How far are we willing to go to show people that it's not just something we're professing, but something that we possess? And that because it's something that we literally have, something that we truly possess, we're willing to share it with them. How far are we willing to go? They have that song, This Little Light of Mine, right? Hide it under a bushel. I mean, if we're being real, we sing the song. There's a profession there that we're not going to hide it. But what's the reality, though? When it comes time that our relationship and experience with Christ can make a difference, a positive impact on someone else, are we quick to hide it? Or are we okay with sharing that aspect of who we are with people? Are we afraid that we're going to get rejected? Or are we confident that the relationship that we have with God can be a benefit and a blessing to someone else? Man, things we got to think about. It's not just about profession, guys. possession. We have to truly have it. Then the profession actually matters. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Most popular verse in the Bible, probably. I'm sure the majority of people out there know this, even if they don't care anything about the Bible, they may have heard this before. It says, he gave him not only to live among men, to bear their sins and die their sacrifice. He gave him to the fallen race. Christ was to identify himself with the interests and needs of humanity. Now, every time that I read through this and I get some new description or new line about something that Christ was doing, I can't help but think, yeah, but Christ is our example. So if I'm reading this about Christ, there has to be a principle that can apply to my life and the way that I relate to the people around me too. Am I willing to identify myself with the interests and needs of humanity? If anyone didn't need to worry about identifying with something lower than, it was Christ. And yet, he didn't find it a problem at all to identify with fallen humanity so that he could meet their needs and so that he could have a common interest with them. Are we willing to do the same? Are we humble enough to do the same? It kind of flips on its head the idea of what true religion and spirituality is, because a lot of times we look at it as, well, we want it to be able to elevate ourselves out of something. But Christ is showing us that it's taking what you have and going down into something. It's different. It's different. That's the example, though. What do we do with that? It says, he who was one with God has linked himself with the children of men by ties that are never to be broken. How willing are we to connect ourselves with the humanity around us, the sinful, plagued, diseased, troublesome, sorrowful humanity around us? How willing are we to do that? Or are we trying to get some kind of ethereal spiritual experience that's going to allow us to just be above and float above all the miasma and avoid all the sickness? Or are we going to dive down in there like Christ did? He's the example. What are we going to do with that? Honest question. What are we going to do with that? Jesus is not ashamed to call them brethren. Whoa. When you think of the people out there, you think of the impact on the world that sin has had and the things that just revile you and repulse you to your core. Are you willing to call some of those people your brothers? I think of the story, Return to Palau documentary. Check it out. Wherever, I'm not sure what platforms it's on right now. It might be on Netflix. But Return to Palau, it tells a story about a missionary family who endured a crazy tragedy at the hands of one of the locals there. And one of the craziest turning points for this small island nation was how the mother of the people who had lost their lives out there showed so much love to the mother of the one who had committed the crime. Brothers, sisters, siblings, despite what that's one of the greatest examples of Christ that I've heard of. I don't know if I could do that. I'm glad she did, though, and the story's out there so you can see it. I believe that's how Christ acted. I believe that that's the example that he set for us. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. It's not easy, but it can be done. If we let Christ work on our hearts, man, it's hard to think of. But are we ashamed to call everyone else brethren? Jesus wasn't, and we shouldn't be too. It takes a huge perspective shift, and it takes a real, we have to view ourselves a whole lot differently if we're going to be able to accomplish this thing. We have to be willing to see people the way that Christ sees them if we're going to be able to accomplish this thing. He is our sacrifice, our advocate, our brother, bearing our human form before the Father's throne, and through eternal ages one with the race he has redeemed, the Son of Man. You talk about sacrifice right there. That's amazing. And all this that man might, not all this so that man would be, but all this so that man might be uplifted from the ruin and degradation of sin, that he might reflect the love of God and share in the joy of holiness. Jesus did all this on a hope, on a chance. He didn't do it with any guarantee of what he was going to accomplish. He did it in faith. Christ is our example. Do we do things and do we interact with people because we're confident in what the outcome is going to be? Or do we reflect Christ because we believe? Because we have hope and we have faith that God is going to come through in his way, in his time, and it may not be our time, but somehow that the seed that we plant along the way can have some kind of impact that we may never get to experience. Are we willing to have that kind of faith? Are we willing to put aside our pride and our dignity and status to see our fellow man as our brother, regardless of what they look like, the things that they've done, where they've come from, their culture, their background? Are we willing? Christ was. It means I have to be too. I'm gonna leave it right there. Battery's at 1%. But it's the Buff Missionary. Like, subscribe, and share. Keep tuning in. There's more to come. Steps of Christ, great book. And it continues to deliver. So we out. Till next time. Peace.